So here we go, a new week in the stock market, and today we're going to do a little bit of a preview for what to look out for the week coming up, because we are getting a little bit busier now. Everyone's kind of waking up after that Christmas period, and there's a few big things going on this week. So I hope you enjoy the video as always, guys. Let's get started. Now, just a quick shout out, if you are on the Patreon and the Discord, I dropped a exclusive video on there a few hours ago, which is a stock request. This is where members of the Discord and Patreon vote for me to take a look into a stock, which was D-Local. Very interesting stock. It took me a good few hours, 7 or 8 hours, to put that video together for you guys on there. So if you are on there, go watch it. It's definitely worth a look at. And if you do want to see the exclusive videos on Patreon, where you get 2 videos a week on there, and as well as that, you do support the channel, the link is in the description to join that, only £5 a month. Now, first of all, the big story that's kind of been talked about over the weekend is Boeing. I'm sure a lot of you saw what happened over the last few days with Boeing. There was a incident where a door blew off in the middle of a flight. I think it was for Alaska Airlines, I believe it was. Yes, it was. So it was flying around 16,000 feet and the door blew off mid-flight, which is actually unbelievable. I think I saw that the person that was actually seated next to the door missed the flight, which is one of those things that you just can't believe when that sort of thing happens. I mean, if they were sat on that flight and that door blew off and they didn't have the seatbelt on, it could have looked a lot worse for Boeing than what it is. So yeah, Boeing, I mean, obviously they've just had so many issues, haven't they, in the last few years. A lot with the 737 Maxes. There's been so many issues with Boeing, and they're just a mess of a company at the moment. I mean, it's getting to the point of view where I don't know about you guys, but I start looking at airlines that are using like Airbus and Boeing, and I'm like starting to think I prefer making sure that these airlines are using Airbuses over Boeings with the amount of issues they're having at the moment. And I mean, looking at the stock, I mean, it used to be an absolute darling of the stock market the last, few years before they started having all the problems with the aeroplanes. A stock that used to be one that everybody wanted to own, a good dividend yield. Stock performed absolutely amazing, and then obviously they started having a few issues with the airlines. Obviously then you had the CV situation, and it's just been an absolute mess for Boeing the next kind of few years. I mean, the last 5 years, this stock is down 30%, and historically, this would have been probably a buying opportunity into Boeing, but because of the issues they've had, I don't know. I mean, it's lucky for them that they have the kind of moat, I guess, that there's only 2 aeroplane makers or passenger plane makers in the world of Boeing and Airbus. If it wasn't for them having that kind of moat around here, I mean, nobody would order in from Boeing anymore. Everybody would be going for Airbus, but obviously, Airbus can only take a certain amount of orders, where you end up going, 3 or 4 years in the backlog that people are kind of forced into buying the planes from Boeing. But with the reputation they're kind of building up there, I mean, it's a bit risky, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, I actually used to own Boeing, and I used to make some good money on Boeing. Don't own any more shares, and I don't think I could, because the reputation they have at the moment is horrendous. Financially as well, very poor. I mean, analysts are now finally starting to forecast them to get back into growth and move back up into profitability. But you look at the valuation is still very rich for the profitability that analysts are forecasting, in my opinion, as well. But even if they are to return to better days, would you still want to, with the issues they've had over the last few years, would you want to own it? I don't know. So yeah, I mean, overall the market, to be fair, I thought the pre-market would be down a bit more than this because of the weighting that Boeing had, and I guess the Dow is red and the pre-market for the S&P and the Nasdaq are green, so there is a bit of a gap at the moment because of Boeing, but I expect us to maybe push it down a little bit more than this. So yeah, obviously Boeing, a little bit of a dip in pre-market today, down 8%, which is quite a big move for Boeing. But yeah, overall, I don't think I'd still touch it, to be fair, at the moment. This week, some interesting things are going on in the stock market as well. We kind of had the start of earnings season. So we've got a couple of earnings on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But you can see Friday here, the big banks are coming in. And as we know, the start of earnings season always starts with the banks: JP Morgan, Delta, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, BlackRock, Citigroup. And then when we get on to next week, the week after, we'll have even more bank earnings starting to come in, and we'll start moving into the peak of earnings season. So yeah, crazy to think that we are just about starting on the earnings season from the US point of view. On the UK side of it, there could be a few surprise trading updates because of the Christmas period. A few people, and next week as well, a few companies would have have worked out their numbers and realised if they're going to have to do a profit warning, or maybe they upgrade the guidance after a strong Christmas trading period. When you look at the UK earnings this week, it would be quite good to see some numbers. Obviously, Games Workshop, they'll have some Christmas period as well. B&M, Greggs, Persimmon, we're going to get a bit of an update in how the UK housing market's going. Marks and Spencer's, they've done a very good job at turning the business round. It'll be interesting to see what they say about the Christmas period as well. So yeah, there'll be a lot of UK numbers as well coming through about housing markets and also the Christmas period and what they saw as well. So it'd be really good to see kind of what the feeling is around the UK, and a few people worried that if we have a weak Christmas period we'll enter a recession. So yeah, it'd be good to see some numbers from that side. Inflation, we have a new batch of inflation data coming. So the new inflation data is going to come out on the 11th. What surprised me is that obviously last month we came in at 3.1. The consensus is actually for us to increase this month up to 3.2, so we are expecting inflation to move in the wrong direction by going up. Surprised me a little bit. I thought inflation would come down a little bit. When you look at the price of oil, that's been coming down. When you look at true inflation has been dropping as well, especially in January. The January drop has actually been pretty impressive as well. I think that will definitely put us into the 2% range. But yeah, I mean, overall, looking at oil and true inflation, I would expect us to see a drop. I really did expect us to start pushing into the 2% range. Obviously, the big thing is when these kind of big comps are taken out of the inflation data, obviously the last few months is setting us up for that 2% range. In fact, we're near stagflation, to be fair. So once these big batches of data are out, we are going to move into the 2% range. I thought we would be getting there a little bit quicker than what we are doing at the moment. Seems like we've hit a bit of a slow point, but like I said, you know, as soon as these big comps are taken out, we'll have good inflation data, and that's what we need. We need good inflation data because, as you guys know, if we're going to have a good year in the stock market this year, we need the Fed to cut, and the Fed are only going to cut if the inflation comes down, and that's why it's really important data that's going to be coming out this week. What did surprise me, and I don't know if any of you guys have actually noticed this, is actually when you go to the UK side, we're going to get the UK inflation data next week. So it always comes about a week after the US data, and we're going to get the UK data on the 17th of January. What really surprised me about the UK inflation data that's going to be coming out is that if you look at the moment, is that we are at 3.9%. Now, obviously, is no consensus at the moment what the data is going to come in at, but if it's another significant, I mean, compared to the US inflation data, it's pretty consistent with analysts' expectations. When you look at the UK inflation data, it's always all over the place. So, for example, the consensus was 4.8, came in at 4.6, so there was a 0.2% difference there. If you look at the November data, 4.4 was the consensus, it came in at 3.9, so there was a 0.5 gap between the consensus. So the inflation data is a lot more all over the place compared to the consensus. Now, last time we came at 3.9. I don't know what, there's no consensus, so there's no point to kind of say where it's going to come in at. But realistically now, if you look at the US inflation at 3.2 and the UK is at 3.9, maybe we have another drop in December. There's no consensus at the moment, but if you were to look at true inflation, the suggestion is that it is going to continue decreasing, and in fact, they're actually predicting at the moment that true inflation is at 2.9% in the UK. So the suggestion is it's probably going to move lower when you look at true inflation. We could actually end up at a point where the UK is at 3.9, let's say it drops to 3.6 and the US inflation comes in at 3.2. We're at a point where the UK inflation is actually only going to be 0.4% behind the US. How crazy is that? If you told someone a year ago when UK inflation was absolutely skyrocketing, you know, nearly towards 20%, if you told someone a year ago that the UK inflation would hit 2% before the US inflation, no one would believe you. I would not believe you. But it is getting very close. The UK inflation is actually getting very close to dropping to 2% before the US. Now that could all change. I'm just showing here that the big gap of how far it was, but yet now it's looking so close. And kind of comes to the expectation that, you know, I think the UK, I think we're going to cut our rates before the US. I think we'll be forced into it a little bit more because we'll have the fears of the recession, and it comes round to, once again, if these earnings start coming in a little bit weaker and it looks like a recession's on the card, I think the UK could be forced a little bit earlier to cut their interest rates a little bit quicker than the US, which could be interesting, that I think not many people would have expected, but something that's going on in the background anyway. So yeah, a bit of a quick update onto some key things that are happening this week. Obviously the drop in Boeing that's currently going on. We've got some US earnings, the US earnings season starting. We've got some UK earnings coming up, and obviously inflation data, which is going to be very interesting as well. So hope you enjoyed the little preview into this week, guys, and make sure you hit the like button, and I'll see you in a bit.